From KUNC and the NPR network, this is In The NoCo. I'm Erin O'Toole. During World War II, the U.S. Army built a unique training ground in the mountains outside of Leadville. Camp Hale trained soldiers in what would become the 10th Mountain Division for combat in extreme alpine conditions, which led to key victories for Allied forces in the mountains of Europe. After the war, some of the soldiers returned to Colorado and helped launch the state's ski industry. A new History Colorado exhibit called Winter Warriors explores the legacy of Camp Hale and its impact on surrounding communities. It's on display at the Hale House Museum in Leadville. I spoke earlier this year with Sydney Mock, a specialist with History Colorado's Anschutz military collections, to learn more about the soldiers on skis. As Colorado celebrates 150 years of statehood, this is one of several fascinating chapters of the state's history we'll reshare in the coming days. Sydney, what problem was the U.S. military trying to solve by creating a high-altitude training center like Camp Hale during World War II?
When World War II began there in 1939, we did recognize that if we were eventually going to go into war facing Nazi Germany, we needed to prepare for all different types of combat scenarios. And one of those scenarios was going to be mountain warfare. The Germans had 3 full-strength divisions specialty trained to fight in the mountains. And at that point, the Army had no divisions here in the United States. And so that was one problem that we were trying to solve, is that we needed to create a special elite division that could fight in the mountains in snowy conditions or rough terrain.
Now, why was the area near Leadville specifically chosen for this important training camp?
Yeah, so there were a lot of factors that they had to consider. It had to have special landscape features that they could use for hiking, rock climbing, skiing, and ample amount of space as well for artillery practice and, general Army training. So Leadville was a very ideal location, that area, especially outside of it, because it was in this large valley near the Pando community. So it had enough space where it could house Army barracks and buildings, as well as being able to install an artillery range, as well as being surrounded by very rocky cliff faces, which provided great training areas for both that rock climbing and skiing element.
So the soldiers became known as the Winter Warriors. What did training actually look like for these soldiers at Camp Hale?
Oh my gosh, as you can imagine, the 15,000 men that ended up training up here at Camp Hale had to learn how to ski. So it started off with taking men who came from areas all over the country who might not have seen snow the way we see here in Colorado, or might have never heard of skiing before, and just throwing them down onto the slopes and training them in that art in that sense.
Man, that must have been quite a shock, I think, for people who had never done that before.
Oh my gosh, they thought they were in some other world. They're like, this is the lost paradise. And for a lot of the men, it's pretty dangerous.
Yeah.
They're skiing on 8-foot skis that are a lot more difficult to maneuver than modern day skis are. And so you have men breaking their legs, breaking their ankles, all with, again, these like early forms of the cable bindings that they use versus like the type of bindings we use today.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And I imagine skiing with all of that gear that they were probably training with, that could not have been easy.
No, you can imagine that these men are also training with at least 90 pounds of gear in their backpacks. And so that's like food rations, their camping equipment, ammunitions, and weaponry. So their balance is all over the place. And so they really had to learn how to master that, facing all of these different factors and elements that were being thrown at them.
People may have heard about the soldiers on skis, but people may not be aware of the role that women played in the military training at Camp Hale. Sydney, could you talk about the Women's Army Corps and how they aided the war effort?
Absolutely. As part of the war effort in World War II, one of those volunteer organizations that was established during the war was the Women's Army Corps. And so these women were trained in all kind of specialty, non-combat skills and duties that would help free up the men for their combat service. And so they were sent around the country, including here to Colorado, to help aid at these different Army installations. And so we get about 200 women actually assigned to Camp Hale to work as like telephone operators,
Okay.
map readers, weather forecasters, and nurses to help keep the camp functioning.
Well, of course, soldiers need a life outside of training and a place to get away and relax when they're off duty. Leadville was the nearest city to Camp Hale. What kinds of experiences did the soldiers have in Leadville?
Yeah, as you can imagine, it was a very colorful time for the men to go get weekend passes to take the train or hop into somebody's vehicle to go up into the town for the weekend. They did, partake in the saloons, the gambling halls, and as well as the brothels, because they were also very active in Leadville in the 1940s.
Oh, my.
So much so that the Army had to ban the soldiers from going to Leadville at several points because they were worried about the moral corruption that the town would have on the soldiers themselves.
Sounds like they were having just too much fun there.
Way too much fun. I heard stories where like some men would even have to walk back to Camp Hale the next morning because they missed their train because they're having way too much fun in Leadville the night before.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
That's a really long walk of shame.
I was going to say a 15-mile walk of shame is pretty embarrassing.
How did this very intense, specialized mountain training at Camp Hale translate into success on the battlefield? I'm wondering what impact the 10th Mountain Division had in World War II.
Oh, yeah. So they, spent 2 years learning how to ski, and then some of them learning how to rock climb. And that became really important for their participation in northern Italy in 1945. They mainly were active in the Apennine mountain region, which is north of Florence.
Okay.
And they were instrumental in helping the Fifth Army Group break through what we call the Gothic Line. And so they used their skills in rock climbing and then cold weather fighting to actually surprise attack the Germans and then take these two key outposts called Riva Regia and Mount Belvedere, which the Germans used to keep the Allied forces from getting into northern Italy.
The training that went on at Camp Hale then was absolutely critical. It was pivotal, it sounds like.
Absolutely. Like using that rock climbing training, they were able to surprise attack the Germans by scaling these 2,000-foot cliff faces,
Whoa.
which helped turn the tide in Italy at the end of the war.
When did Camp Hale shut down?
Actually, it was not in operation for very long. Men received their assignment to leave to go to Texas at the end of 1944. So like by the end of 1945, 46, the camp doesn't exist there anymore. They really make an impact, in a very, very short amount of time.
Sydney Mock is a specialist with History Colorado's Anschutz military collections. She spoke with me earlier this year about the Winter Warriors exhibit in Leadville. The impact of the 10th Mountain Division went beyond helping the Allies win World War II. Many of the soldiers who trained at Camp Hale returned to Colorado after the war, and they helped shape Colorado into a global destination for winter sports. We'll hear more on that in tomorrow's episode. You can learn more and see some photos of Camp Hale in our show notes and at KUNC.org. That's it today for In The NoCo. I'm Erin O'Toole. Thanks so much for listening.